Hello to anyone listening. We forgot to record the introduction, so I'm adding it after the fact. You're listening to the Neighborhood Radio. This is the extra community front page segment where we interview artists of all kinds, and we were very happy to have Newfound interests in Connecticut on. Mark and Matt were super insightful. I just want to say again, very much appreciate them taking their time, and thank you for listening. So, yeah, onto the show, Neighborhood Radio.
What subject do you teach generally?
So my two main ones are English and math. And when I started teaching, it was mainly English, like English literature. But now, lately, it's been almost all math.
Yeah. Right.
I just sort of take what I can get.
I used to really when I was in high school, it was my dream job to be an English teacher.
Oh yeah.
Because it was my English teacher was my favorite teacher at school, and I loved it.
Same.
And it and it just sort of inspired me. I was like, the way that I love this English teacher and the way that he makes me want to come to school every day. I was like, I want to be in 20 years.
How's that going?
No, I did a single semester of teaching and then decided it wasn't for me. So
that's a very common experience.
Yeah, so I ended up to HR. Just because it sort of had that similar thing of helping people and being there for people and whatever.
Yeah, for sure. So. Matt's asking, it's giving a message that he has to be a member for 10 minutes before he can ask to join the stage.
Really?
I don't know if that's a
really.
thing.
I guess that's a Discord thing. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, we've never heard of that. Hang on.
But I don't see him in the audience either. Weird.
Maybe he's just not literally not letting him join the audience.
Hang on, I'm gonna get. That's a pain. Is real available, Rick? Do you know?
No.
Damn. That is a massive pain. Hang on, give me a second. I'm just gonna Google this.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't know, but I just Googled it and it looks like it's an optional thing that people were asking. I found a Reddit post asking how to set it so that you have to wait 10 minutes. So I don't know. Bizarre.
What made you decide to be a teacher?
It's a couple things. One, it was I liked English and math, and so there's not a lot you can do with that weird combo. But then my favorite job in high school was a summer camp counselor.
Yeah.
And it's just how could I do this but in a more sustainable way? I liked working with teenagers even back then.
Yeah.
So it kind of became the goal out of that.
Yeah. This is probably a bit of a cliche question, but how come you're not a music teacher?
Because I was and Matt will tell you this, I'm by far the least actually musically talented in the band. So the rest of them are these musical geniuses, and I was I picked the bass because A, nobody played bass, and B, it's one note at a time, right? Unless you're getting to advanced no chords, none of that.
No, I used to be I'm not don't play any instruments myself, but I was friends with a lot of kids who were in bands in high school. And when Battle of the Bands would come around and people would start forming bands, I remember hearing lots of kids picking bass, because all they'd have to do is play one note every now and then. But
and no one it's the lowest, it's the hardest instrument to pick out for just a regular audience member. So you can your mistakes aren't as obvious, and the old joke the band would say is because I sort of tried to compensate on stage by being the crazy one who's jumping around and doing, and so oftentimes my cable would come unplugged, and the guys would joke about how sometimes they'd wait a few minutes to tell me because it was sounding better.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's kind of underappreciated though. There's a lot of I have a friend who's a bass player. He's a fantastic bass player. And he gave me a new appreciation for what what the bass brings to
Oh, no,
like the overall
for
sound.
sure.
And are you familiar with Thundercat?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, like again, yeah, I feel like Thundercat has done a lot for bringing bass to like the forefront of music and like helping sort of people understand what that thing. But it's like for me with like like my favorite song off the album is and started sharing stories, and I feel like the bass line is like really prominent, like one of the first things that
Thank
you really
you.
pick up with that song.
I love that bass line too, and then we sort of copy the bass line with the vocals too, or we follow it as well. Yeah. No, that was. Oh wait, no, wait. It started. I always get since they're all connected. It goes. Wait, it goes.
So and
Here's
started sharing
information. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Then They Kissed. Started sharing stories. The second one. That's Matt
Yeah.
wrote that bass line for me.
Yeah.
He says he has 1 minute 40 left on the countdown. But no, that's one of our few songs that's very bass driven, like aggressive bass.
Like that. Yeah.
Though the one part I did come up with for that song, I came up with the slow down at the end. He gave me the bass line, he structured the song, but then I came up with I think this thing will sound really good if we just slow down the notes as we close out that song.
You know, a funny story. That song actually got me a date on Tinder, because I matched with a girl, and in her bio she was like, if you can send me a song that I've never heard of and that I love, like I will go on a date with you. And then she said that she was really into emo music, and I was like, oh, okay. So like I sent her that, and then she's like, all right, drinks on me, and I'm like,
hey.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a pretty specific vibe to send to a girl, because it's not like, I don't know, it's not a very romantic song, right? Like,
yeah,
you're kind of like guessing that specific vibe would work. So that's a good, good on you.
So I noticed like in her top artists she had like My Chemical Romance, the Get Up Kids, and a few others.
Makes you a red flag.
Yeah. I think she had Weezer and a few bands like that. So I was like I feel like this
the Venn diagrams there.
yeah. So like your personal music taste, like what kind of stuff day to day do you sort of normally like listen to?
It's a good question. I mean, I think all of us, I can't speak for Matt, but from what I'm pretty sure we'd say, I mean, I could see him in the audience. Yeah. Most of us have drifted away from, I think it's a normal thing when you get older to listen to less of the stuff you listened to in your youth.
Oh,
so
definitely,
it's definitely not nearly as much of the emo, Southwest stuff. Like, let me try to think of what I've been listening to lately.
What about newer artists?
Yeah.
Matt, you should be able to just join as a speaker. You shouldn't have to request because I've given you a special role to let you just join. Do you listen?
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, do you listen to much like modern hip hop at all?
Yeah, a bit. Like, I really like Kendrick.
Go.
My students are impressed when I know when I knew who Ice Spice was this year. It's a really great rapper out of Chicago, Serengeti. He's
Serengeti, yeah.
He's crazy awesome. Prolific, but it's almost too much. But there's a couple of the albums are just incredible.
He have you heard his album with Sufjan Stevens?
No, I never actually listened to that. Even though some of Sufjan's are some of my favorite albums, I never actually. It's one of those ones where you read a couple of reviews and it doesn't sound good, and you're like, I have such high opinion of these guys. I don't want to hear a project that's not actually going to be good.
No, I sort of had the same feeling about it, but yeah.
Because there was like a super group. There was a few other people in it too, right?
Yeah, so there was Sunlux, Sufjan, and Serengeti, I think.
Yeah, and I love all those artists individually.
yeah, which is a crazy combination. But I feel like it's the sort of group where it's like their individual sounds like are so unique and so different that it's
Yes.
hard to have enough of each artist to feel satisfying.
Or to find some new sound that's a combination.
Yeah.
And then if they do find a new sound that's a combination, I could imagine a lot of the audience will be disappointed. Oh, this, I'm a Sufjan fan and I don't hear any, it is Sufjan sound.
Yeah.
It's such a tough
Yeah.
road to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It's I also saw like in the Newfound Discord the other day you mentioned that you were into Cloud Dead.
Yeah. The old Anticon stuff was a big thing for me and my wife too. Like we both share a love for a lot of Y's early albums, and he was sort of a fringe member of Cloud Dead. I feel like or at least featured on some of their songs. And then Baths too. They got a few great albums on that label, and then they got Cloud Dead as well. Like. So my wife and I met through the band. She hosted a radio show at her university, and she interviewed us when we were in her town. But yeah, then one of the albums she played on a radio show and got me into was one of the Cloud Dead albums.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's the one with the cotton candy.
Yeah.
Done any way you like it.
Yeah, I need to. I re-listened to their self-titled album yesterday. And like I just forgot like how awesome it was.
Audience member asks, which university was it?
That was at Western. Yeah, I was at U of T and she was at Western at the time. I can hear you, Matt. I think I can hear you clicking. Nice. A few of my students got into Guelph. My grade 12s.
How long have you been teaching?
Like 10 years in total, but it's been a weird journey in that like only in the past 2 years do I have like a stable full-time teaching gig. So it was like a long winding road for me from the end of my training to actually being a full-time teacher. I can't. No. Matt's asking if I can hear him talking. I can't. Nobody else can.
We
right?
can't.
He's muted right now, but when his mic was on, we could hear him.
Yeah.
You could hear a little bit. Yeah.
I heard the clicking. Like a pen.
Okay, I let him know.
So are you and Matt like the main ones that are still in contact after the band broke up, or?
No, we've all stayed in pretty good contact. So Matt and Moshe have played in a number of bands together since.
Yeah.
So they see each other all the time at band practice, and they played in Absolutely Free, and before that was Day Month Year.
Yeah.
So they're in constant contact. Gary, who I started Newfound with, he does some solo stuff, but he left for a few years to Budapest.
Okay.
Yeah, and he just recently came back. And then Matt Doherty, for a few years was living in Ireland and then Oxford, England. And he recently just moved back. So this calendar year is the first year in about 10 where we're all in Ontario again. But through the whole time, there's been just various chats. We all, I think, at some point visited each other in different countries, and so we're all still good friends, and there's no bad blood or anything.
Awesome.
How much have
Matt even recently played. Gary wanted to do some shows for solo stuff, so Matt helped him out and played bass for some of his shows. Our old drummer ended up playing with him as well, so it's like, it's a tight, good friend group. Like, these guys were all the groomsmen of my wedding. Like, we're all tight.
Aww.
It's good that it stays together through all that long time, because like, man, time can drift anyone apart. Seriously,
It's wild.
Yep.
It's Like you see each other less and less, but if you're that's a sort of a measure of friendship, right? That like you don't.
It's when you
if you got a real friend, you don't. Yeah.
Dang.
Even if you don't see each other in a few
I
years,
think-
it's still.
I think we can hear you now, Matt.
Hello. Welcome to the Neighborhood Radio.
Maybe.
Click.
Getting some clicking.
As seen in Rolling Stone, correct, Wes? The one sentence mention.
Yeah, the the rapper who sort of is the main I guess the person who sort of created this server, he did an interview in Rolling Stone about this server, and he mentioned our radio show, and since then we've just been milking it for like every every little every little bit we can get.
So that's Brockhampton. Is that right?
Brockhampton, yeah. You ever heard of them?
I've heard of them. I never actually listened to anything though. Where would you recommend
okay.
I start?
I feel
The
like
album Iridescence.
it's that. See, Iridescence, I think, is a very, how do you call it? What's the word? Ambitious album. And if you want to see like what they're creatively capable of, even if you might not like it, you can see like how like creative they really are there. But I think Set One would be a good one because they have such a wide range of sounds on that one.
The thing with Brockhampton is they pretty much any genre you can think of that is adjacent to hip hop, like they've made it.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of like R&B. There's like a lot of like experimental like heavy stuff that's more like on the screamo side. There's like really soft like love songs. There's like heaps of like really fast like rapping songs. Like it's just there's like a very very wide range of
Eclectic
sounds
group of young
get
people,
it.
and
Get into.
you hear it through the music. Like, I think that one would be a great jump into it because it starts off
which is
very embracing.
Saturation is their first album.
Okay.
And it starts off with like a borderline like heavy metal like punk kind of a song, and then it goes into like a more typical rap song, and there's also some like Justin Timberlake-esque like R&B on there, and some indie rock kind of stuff. I don't know, it's just all over the place. But yeah, they're really awesome. Now, one of my questions as well is whether or not you are listen to any or aware of any bands, like new bands that are influenced by Newfound interests.
Sorry, my son wants to say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Bye.
How are you?
Yeah, I think he'll show you his Nerf gun, then he'll get ready for bed.
Awesome.
Awesome.
There you
Oh,
go.
Look at that big old.
hell yeah! I loved Nerf guns when I was that age. I had so many.
That's one of the guys who's interviewing me. Okay. Remind me of the question again?
Like whether you listen to any of so I know a few
Yeah.
modern artists that are like influenced by Newfound interest. I was just wondering if you were personally into or aware of any of them.
It's hard because like I don't know directly. Like there's at one point one of the I think it was Moshe said that he read on somebody's Tumblr interview that one of the people in The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm Not Afraid to Die mentioned this in an interview. I've never been able to actually find that interview, but it's a great band. And like I was already listening to them as one of the few sort of emo adjacent bands that I kept up with, so that was cool. And I don't know if it was you in the Newfound Discord, but somebody recently had brought up who's that amazing Korean band, or is it?
I remember mentioning the artist called Asian Glow. Paranal, yeah.
So I listened to a lot of Paranol, and so It was you that had mentioned that?
Yeah.
That they had mentioned Newfound in an interview?
That sounds like something I'd mention. Yeah, because I love Parannoul. Like they're probably my favorite artist of all time.
So yeah, then that blew my mind because that's the case where it's not like, I had read an interview that they mentioned us, and I'm like, okay, I'll go check them out. It was the other way around where I still read Pitchfork. I read a review of it on Pitchfork. Oh, this sounds like something I'd like. I listened to their album and it was incredible, and then to find out later that Newfound might have influenced in some ways, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Because I know there's so Parannoul, like, so there's this whole like South Korean emo scene that's like blown up at the moment. There's another artist called Asian Glow, and he lists the EP as one of his biggest influences, not even the album.
That's a deep.
Which I found really interesting.
Yeah, same with us. Anybody who likes the EP for us is confounding, but so many people have reached out being like, it resonates as much or more than the album. So it's just like, so that we as have such complicated feelings about it that we hadn't even considered that would be like a possibility. But you know, everybody has their own experience and their own taste, and we're not gonna judge.
Yeah. That's actually how I got into you guys, because Asian Glow said that were a big influence, and then I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna check them out, and I listened to the album, and then I sent my favorite song in, and then he was like, oh no, it wasn't actually the album that influenced me. And I'm like, oh okay, and then got into the EP, and because it's interesting as well, like how much the EP has like such a different sound from
it's
the album.
Yeah,
was...
no, I see his hands up. It's not like letting me accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that hand too.
I just got a message from him saying there's no audio. I was going to try downloading Discord on his phone. Cool.
I see.
Just as, yeah.
All right. So what I'm gonna get up now. So as you might have seen, I created a Q&A.
Yes.
So I got some members of the server, to ask some questions. So just got that open up in front of me. So the first question is from a server member called Sketchy. Sketchy's Canadian as well, and Sketchy was just wondering what your favorite item from Tim Hortons is.
It's funny, because Tim Hortons was probably I think that's my first job. And so within a week of working there, within a week I couldn't eat a donut anymore, just because like it's so rich, and after just eating a donut every shift, you kind of get sick of it. And plus, I'm not a big sweets guy anyways. So after a while working there too, they started changing the rules on us about what we were allowed to eat for free.
Rough.
So, but then we found workarounds. So like we were allowed coffee and donuts, I think, were the two things that we were allowed to have for free. So then if we wanted a soup, we would just put it in a coffee cup and just be sipping our coffee as we worked, right? So, but nowadays, so that's back when I was like 14 or whatever. Nowadays, for an item at Tim Hortons, probably the red eye ice cap is what I get most regularly. So it's a iced cappuccino, which I still don't understand what that slurry is. It's not really, it's just called iced cappuccino name, but I have no idea what's actually in it. But then to be red eye, you put a shot of espresso in there. That's the one I still order the most regularly when I'm there. I'm a big coffee addict.
I was about to ask, are you a big caffeine guy? I'm assuming as a teacher you got to be.
Yeah, my wife used to be a barista, and like, no. I worked the stovetop. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm not a big coffee guy at all. I probably drink it like twice a year. Alright. But people always think I'm crazy for that.
No, Moshe's the same. The drummer Moshe, he's even switched over to the what's it called? The dandelion coffee, which I can't do.
Yeah.
Just
Dandelion coffee.
because he gets too much, I think, anxiety from drinking anything with caffeine in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I like literally about 2 weeks ago, I stayed up until 5 a.m. and I had work at 9 a.m. And so I got to work and I smashed down a few coffees, and then I was an anxious wreck for the rest of the day. And I haven't really had coffee since then.
Oh man, to be young. I remember the days of doing stuff like that. Those are long gone.
Oh, I'll never forget my worst time like that. So I was at a friend's house. We had a party and I was drinking until about 5:30, I reckon, and I started at work at 8:45. And I was working at a cinema at this point. It was when COVID had just hit. And we still had to do temperature checks before work. And when I got to work, my manager was like, he looked at us and he's like, everyone, like, don't forget to do your temperature checks. And then he looks at me and he's like, and Zeke, don't forget to do a breathalyzer before you start.
Ouch.
And I'm like, do I really look that drunk?
Wow.
But yes, that was kind of bad. But
It's funny, the temperature check thing never really happened here. Like, as a teacher, we had to jump through so many hoops in terms of COVID, but temperature checks never really took off in Canada, or at least from what I could tell.
It's probably too cold for anyone to reach the temperature required. So the next question we had was what were some popular tunings that you used and that were popular in the scene?
See, this is where you need Matt. The one I know is that Gary would play a lot of drop D.
Okay.
But beyond that, like, I'm not tuning my bass in any strange way. But that reminds me, let me pull up on our Discord, we have frequently asked questions, and I started a document.
I actually have that document saved.
Because there's a chance, like, that's a question we get often, and so there's a chance that it's on that doc.
I have that FAQ because I'm like, I don't want to ask anything that's
That's not on the FAQ then?
Let me check. I can't remember actually. I do know it's funny, one of my questions that I had a question lined up about the title for We Can Be Tigers But No Crashing. But then I saw that was in the FAQ and I'm like, damn, like I thought that was like a really like niche like question.
It's a good story.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything in the FAQ about
because I know we've gotten that one on probably on Instagram or something before.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe table it for now, and if Matt ever is able to download and connect, he'll be able to speak to some of the stuff that he's done.
Yeah, cool. So next question we have is what bands influenced you the most when you guys started out?
So I think this is actually a good way to come back around to the EP versus the album, because you had said earlier, like, it's such a big change in sound, and I think that can be traced to sort of what we're listening to, especially because the EP was very early on, and I think every band, especially like a teenage band, you're starting off by just trying to sound like bands you like.
Yeah,
and
no,
so
100%. Yeah.
For us with the EP, by far the biggest goal of sounding like was a local band, Monine, from Toronto at the time. I think they were on what did they end up? They got on one of those punk labels in the States. I forget which one. But a few of their early albums, their Small Chairs EP, and then whatever their first full length was. It's just they were like local scene legends. Yeah. And the sort of guitar work that they did with their with the octaves, it just became sort of our goal sound. And so and that's part of the reason we have complicated feelings about the EP. Because even to us, like, at the time, we're like, yeah, this really does sound like Monine. We were proud of that. But now we're just like, we know what we were trying to rip off, and so when we listen to it now, like we hear us ripping somebody else off, and or at least in our minds. I'm sure like there were things we did that made it our own a bit, but we knew like we have that feeling of knowing what. But beyond Moneen, big one at that time was Weezer as well. Yeah. Those Pinkerton Blue album. And then Weezer was just making their comeback at the time with the Green album. And so that's what the lyrics of the first song on the EP are partly about. We used to count on. We used to, just kind of being disillusioned by how disappointed we were with the comeback. Like, is this what happens when you get old, sort of thing? But then and then so to compare that to the album, we just started having a wider range of stuff we listened to. So Godspeed was a big one.
Oh, I love Godspeed.
That sort of, that
I mean, you can tell that with that intro song, like straight away, that post rock. And the Mogwai there too, and like Explosion. So a lot of post rock. But then locally too, like you can sort of pinpoint a moment. We were in Montreal. This is after the EP. It's one of the few tours we did outside of Toronto. We were gonna tour once in the East Coast, and we crashed our van the day before tour. And then that was not long until the end of the band from there, I think. But anyways, we did get out to Montreal for some shows, and Quebec City. And the one show we played in Montreal randomly was with the Hot Heat, who were just This is right before they blew up. Because for a few years in the 2000s, they were just randomly, with that one album, the biggest band in indie rock. Anyways, but there was another band opening, Rockets Red Glare from Toronto. And even from soundcheck, we just couldn't believe what we were seeing. We had never seen a band play like that before. Yeah, and, I know that band's mentioned in in the FAQ.
It's just because it was such a monumental moment where, like, we literally at that night after we played, we'd sit down in the van and we were just looking at each other, being like, "Do we even, carry on? Like, can we really match up to something like that?"
Yes.
So and so with them, it's a lot of like, I'd say it's post-punk sort of, but they're like all musical geniuses. So it just showed us that like these guys have such a unique sound. So whereas with the EP, it was more just trying to emulate and get that Moneen sound. Whereas with the album, it's like we saw this band that had such a unique, interesting voice that was unlike anything we'd heard before. So that's what we were trying to emulate, not their sound, but that endpoint of finding our own really unique spin on things that doesn't sound like anything else.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because it's one of the things like I've sort of like found most interesting was like so like that EP is very contemporary to emo at the time, whereas once you get to the album, it sounds a lot older, like more like late 90s, like kind of like stuff. And you can definitely like hear that, like those influences, particularly like Godspeed You, and so no, that's really good.
And a lot of that was also working with a producer. So the Steve, the guy who the producer who was recording the album with us, he's an old head. Yeah, Matt had one of Matt's other bands had recorded an EP with him, but he had worked with a lot of some of the bigger bands in the 90s in Canada, and I think he brought a lot of that old school element to the recording, and even in like the way we wanted to be mixed, we wanted to be mixed with the lows were really lows and the highs were really high in terms of the volume range. And that's not something you hear as much with super compressed stuff. So yeah, we were definitely trying to bring in some elements of stuff that we thought was a bit more not necessarily of more just out of time, like that would you know stand out as being interesting from any time.
Yeah, it's and yeah, it's just bizarre like to hear your album and it's contemporary to like Panic at the Disco and My Chemical Romance and like bands like that. And it's just like in 2023, it's like weird to think, you know, they're both emo from the same time, but yeah.
Yeah, but at that point we had like definitely not followed that path of emo. And like you said, like it's just it was going in a direction that wasn't really our personalities, and that's fine. So we just sort of set out about trying to find our own thing.
Yeah. So next question we have was probably one you're probably sick of answering, but what was your reaction to the rise, like the new, like the resurgence of the album, like in the last two or three years?
I'll never get sick of this, man.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one who's like, I don't know. I've always wanted this to happen for the album because I just love like I'm like the album super fan in the band. Like everybody else likes it, but I've always known that it could, if it found an audience, that it could resonate. Like even like when we were having the discussions about breaking up, that happened right before we had wanted to record, and so the compromise I struck with Gary was like, can we please, these are really good songs, I don't want to have made these for nothing, like let's at least get them documented, and then, you know, play a few final shows and wrap this up properly. And so that's what we did, and I'm really glad we did. And I don't know. And it's been fascinating to see, honestly, because you see, like the whole time I'm like, I've secretly hoped for this to happen, and then in drips and drops things would happen, and I'd try not to get my hopes up, but I'd still like, you know, be fascinated to watch it as it's unfolded. And so it's just been a really satisfying experience that like my inner intuition that there's something there that's worth fighting to preserve, you know, over time has found the audience that I felt like would be there for it.
Yeah, no, that's and it's like a really special thing, I think, to have something like from so long ago, probably in your past, to come back and gain a completely new life with completely new fan base and people that probably, like, you know, like I was 4 years old when that album came out. People that weren't around for the original run, I guess, to rediscover it, and because it's crazy that it's like now the 10th highest rated emo album of all time.
You see, that I never in a million years would have.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I could think of 10 out of 10 other ones, but I don't know. That's super cool, and it's to speak to your age thing. I think it's just like my theory is that there's just that age range where we were really trying to document the things we were going through at that time. That sort of end of high school, trying to figure out life and where you're going and the anxieties around that. I think that's just, it continually seems to, like the people, I occasionally will look at the new followers we get on Instagram. It's always that age range, right? Because I think that's just, that's who the album speaks to, because it was sort of what we were trying to capture in our own lives.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, it looks like we've got visuals from Matt. Do we have audio?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Woo! Yeah.
We can. Let's go. We got there. We got there in the end.
I'm using my
How's it going?
I'm using my partner's cell phone and it's an iPhone 5.
Rock on.
There's a little fucked up, but
An iPhone 5? Damn.
Yeah.
It's gotta be. That's the
I disagree. I disagree with everything Marcus.
Yeah. Awesome.
I would say go ahead.
No.
was gonna make a joke that we're all about vintage gear with the iPhone 5, right?
Yeah.
And the trainer head.
So with Matt now in the mix, I just want to go back to the question about the popular tunings, and the main tunings that you guys sort of use.
Tunings, like our guitar.
Yeah.
E, A, D, G, B, and
Yeah.
standard tuner. I don't think.
Yeah.
I definitely never.
Didn't do anything crazy with it.
No.
Gary would do drop D a lot. That's the furthest I got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. That was the. Yeah. Yeah, but nothing else.
Okay, there you go. So Matt, what kind of music do you listen to these days?
These days, good question. I've been listening to like there's a few bands from Canada. This band called Freak Heatwaves, who just put out a new album, kind of like psychedelic electronic band.
What was that? Freak Heatwaves? Did you say?
Yeah, Freak Heatwaves.
Yeah.
They kind of have like.
Oh yeah, I found them.
Weird, like sexy,
Yeah.
but dangerous, kind of weird vocals and.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I've found their music. I'm gonna save that. Sounds cool.
Some like freaky electronic stuff. For years I've been listening to lots of. I got deep after Newfound, deep into like Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
And from there, got into a bunch of like, just that huge wave of like international psychedelic compilations, like Afrobeat, Southeast Asian psych stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys listen to any of the Australian psychedelic stuff, like King Gizzard, Tame Impala?
I made a.
Tame Impala's Australian? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. I signed to King Gizzard, like one of their bootleg record covers once, like a year or two ago. It was pretty decent. I like that song. I like the microtonal banana.
Flying microtonal banana. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And obviously.
Yeah, and Eric put that out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the same label that did the Newfound reissue, he put out one of the bootlegs of the King Gizzard.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the actually speaking of physical releases for Newfound as well. Sorry, another question I had was the CD, like that was it's got the whole sort of handmade thing going on. What was the sort of? It's the only release I've ever seen that's kind of like that. Like, what was the decision like behind that?
I think a big part of our band was just like just the DIY, like do yourself ethic of like we wanted to put out like we wanted to put out that 7-inch split. We just like looked up how to do it and contacted people and sent our money away and got the records back. Same thing with like, we should make like t-shirts. Like, how do you make t-shirts? Oh, there's a thing called screen printing. It's like, okay, well, we'll screen print it, learn how to do that. So it's kind of like that mentality. It's like, okay, we're going to put an album together. And, it was something that clearly, that was pretty special to us. And we wanted to make it as special as possible.
Yeah.
There's definitely like an air of that type of thing in the early 2000s of people making kind of like handmade packaging and often with like CDRs and stuff like that.
Yeah. So oh, sorry. No, you go.
Just to give two quick examples that I think influenced us in that, the Constantines, their first album, they had some handmade packaging before they got picked up by Sub Pop, and they had with this they use like a matchstick in their inside their handmade packaging. And then Godspeed 2, for their first record, they included a penny with each one that was run over by the train that went behind their studio. So it's a bent penny.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, so stuff like that really resonated with us, and we tried to run with it.
It's true.
So,
all the concept records.
Yeah, just for some context, Rick. Their album, it comes in like a cardboard. Like if you buy the CD, it comes in like a cardboard little slipcase that's like been stamped by the band and numbered like 1 to 500, and like it has like little
all personal
cutout of like the lyrics and stuff like that. It's really cool. But,
I still love to hear that because I feel like with a lot of stuff like that, that feels like special. Like making a CD and vinyl and stuff, it's so easy, but it loses a lot of that. The actual artist interacting with it. So I think that's really badass that a legendary band is still keeping that up after their album still has that reissued everything. What was the first like domino in actually getting that to happen? Because over 10 years is a pretty large gap.
You mean the reissue?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think actually, okay, if I may, I think the first like, it's been about almost 10 years since it kind of like started to like, it was a real slow build. Like it started with somebody reviewed the album on like allmusic.com or something. And then also, I had the CD on Discogs, just there because why not? Maybe somebody will eventually would be interested in it. And I started selling it, and then I put up another one, and I sold that one, and so I started looking into it, and I saw that band, The World is a Beautiful Place, and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die.
Yeah.
They like blog interview had like name checked us, and I think that might have been as a influence, I guess somehow in the long name department at least.
Yeah.
But essentially, that was kind of like the first thing I saw outside of it, and then like I don't know, a couple years later, I was on tour with one of my bands, and somebody in Calgary was like, "Oh, I loved your band. Yo, check it out. My friend got a tattoo of your album cover on like a sleeve on his arm," and I was like, "Whoa, that's interesting." It's like all these things kept coming up, and then selling records like a CD a week, and then a couple labels started reaching out to us, reissuing. We're like, maybe, and then it was just kind of like a snowballed in some ways.
Yeah. So because I noticed and then the record, the vinyl pressing sold out and everything, and which is crazy.
Yeah, they actually repressed more copies because the initial pressing was sold out so quickly.
Yeah.
What made you say no at first to labels reaching out?
I don't know. I guess
I'd say it had to do with feel if it felt like a good match, if it felt like the right time when we're talking about it. Does it really feel like we should be putting this out? So it took a while for us to get there, and then the different labels that had reaching out just didn't seem like the right ones in terms of other bands on the label. We'd listen through, and it just finding one that felt like a natural fit, because we just didn't want to just jump at the first one, and
just trying to get another band on that label.
Yeah, or just trying to find one that seemed like a natural home to do it.
Yeah, and there was wanted to put out a cassette, and we're like, meh. And it was also, once the CD started, we started getting kind of low on the CD stock. We're like, okay, there's clearly interest in people, we don't want to be super presumptuous that we're going to get the old band back together and re-release this record,
Yeah.
but yeah, once we were down to like maybe like less than 100 copies, and like, okay, we've been selling one for like, you know, one at least one a month to 1 week for the last couple of years. Maybe there, you know, maybe there are people who would be interested. And we didn't put it out in vinyl because at the time, because it kind of wasn't. People weren't. It was like a little bit cost prohibitive, and people weren't doing it as much. So we're like, okay, now that there was 3 labels, and we're like, okay, we can get these 3 labels to kind of like coordinate and put it out, and yeah,
awesome. I was also wondering about the walking sort of spoken word parts in between like each song. Like that's probably like one of my favorite parts of the album because I just think it really really grounds you like in the world of the album. And I was just wondering like how you guys sort of did that and like what it sort of means. And
so that's my baby. If it, honestly, these were arguments we had as a band where I, in my dream, that'd be audible underneath the whole album. Any sort of quiet parts, you'd be able to hear that underneath. But we found a compromise that worked for everybody. But to go back to the origin of it for me, because like we talked about earlier, I'm not like necessarily super talented musically, but I'm a big conceptual guy. So
I feel that.
So one of the big influences that we haven't mentioned yet, microphones were a big one for us, / Mount Erie. And on one of his albums, this was the first I'd ever heard of the idea that if you turned up one of his albums, in the gaps between songs, you could hear the sounds of a tugboat that he recorded from near his house. And that sort of planted that seed in my mind, and I started thinking, well, we have these songs. What would I put underneath that would be fitting for these collection of songs? And I even went so far as to like, me and a couple friends, LeCompte, that's for Matt. We went out to some fields. We lived suburban Toronto, and I recorded him screaming, running across the field, and then we listened to it later, and it sounded like complete trash. So I'm like, this isn't it. So I had that thought on my mind. And I was driving around one night, listening to the Canadian national broadcaster, and there was a show called Ideas. It's still on the air, and they were profiling a composer. I think his name's Richard Ives, who did a lot of really interesting stuff with orchestras. And one of the things that he did was he loved the idea of a parade and the way parades sounded as they passed you by. So he composed a symphony that's supposed to mimic the sound of the instruments getting closer and then receding. And that really resonated with me and seemed like a natural overlap with the album. So then I had the thought of, well, he's composing that for a symphony that's sitting on a stage and they're increasing their volume and decreasing their volume as they play. But what if we recreated that physically with recording where either the band is walking away, or what we ended up settling on is the band was stationary, so it was all our friends playing instruments, and us with the field recording or camcorders walked away from them to create that effect of the sound slowly disappearing. And then once I had that idea, I'm like, well, we can keep going with it. We can then have them join us and record conversations. So I just went crazy with it, especially like I'd have those long bus rides to see my wife and my girlfriend at the time in Western. So I'd just be sitting on the bus for 2 hours waiting to see her and mapping out these ideas for what we could have on that field recording. And then when it actually came to do it, that's where my lack of musical skill came into play, and I'm like, I have all these ideas. And Matt, I remember sitting in Moshe's living room, and Matt's like, okay, what notes are these people playing? And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. So that's where everybody else helped out, and we were able to find something that worked, and it I'm still really
So who is it? Who is it? Like, there's someone very prominently that you can hear talking, going like, "Oh, it's spontaneity."
That's me.
Who's that? That's you. Yeah.
That's me, just like being the cheerleader, trying to coach people.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
wondering. Yeah, I was
I
gonna ask
remember
if that
hearing a
was
part
you,
where
if
they're
it
like,
was your
"Wait, it's
idea.
recording now? Yeah, this is recording. This is it."
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, because
Oh, I was just gonna add to what Mark was saying is that you can hear kind of his him trying to get those ideas out and people being like super tired and being like, wait, what are we doing? And he's like, no, like, just like trust me, I've got an idea, like we're doing it right now.
I love how that
And
transitions.
so many.
too.
Yeah, so many of those things and those little moments, those like the whole this is part of it. You know, it becomes like a represent.
absolutely.
What I mean,
I
like,
think it
super
really
meta,
ties. I think it really ties everything together because I even before I had listened to Newfound Interest, it's something I do in my music. I have a friend that I record music with. And on one of our songs, I got a clip recording of her saying, "Oh, that was really bad," and so I left that in the song. And so the song finishes, and then you hear my friend go, "Oh, that was awful," and yeah, just like, so I was already a big fan of stuff like that, and so it was really cool to hear that like in the album, and
yeah, it's nice to have those like artifacts and like slices of life, especially now when it's like so easy to make everything absolutely sterling perfect sounding.
And
yeah, let's see AI do that.
Yeah. Because I'm a big, like, I'm really into hiking as well, and I think it's really cool, like, having the footsteps and stuff. It really makes it easy to imagine that you're like walking through like this dark like landscape, like frozen landscape, like while listening to the album. And
it wasn't frozen, but it was very dark. We did it in the summer, but it was on like some back road north of the city, on the gravel and by some like apple farms. So like, it was in the middle of the night too. We wanted to pick somewhere where we didn't get the cops called on us.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. No, it's probably like one of the most unique touches on the album, I think, that really like it's more something like that would be like in a black metal album than like an emo album.
Yeah, I want to ask because in terms of like the overall concept of the album, I think that really helps because in general it's very interpretive because the instruments feel like takes the spotlight more than the vocals. Like sometimes there's entire songs without even any lyrics, and I want to know like what went into that decision to being more of an instrumental album as a whole for the concept.
Do you want to go, Matt? Since you're the singer.
No. I mean, we Mark and I really worked like the lyrics. I mean, basically we had most of the songs had like maybe like a vocal line, but not so much lyrics. But then Mark came with lyrics, and we kind of like put most of his in with mine, and I changed my like my melodies around and stuff. But as far as like songs being instrumental, mostly instrumental, I mean, I think in general we thought of, and I think I still do think of vocals as like one other instrument, not the like the cherry on top or something. So whether something has lyrics with no vocals or not necessarily.
And I noticed this.
Mark, as far as go ahead.
I was just gonna add, just conceptually, like, the album wasn't written in like with a plan for this. Let's write this song that's gonna start off the album. We just wrote a bunch of songs and then pieced them together. And so when we're writing a song, like Matt was saying, it was more of a focus of being like, our vocals going to add something to this song that we feel like this song needs. Like the same thing with any other, like with some songs we added some horn parts or some viola parts because it felt like the song needed that. And so we just use our judgment from song to song, being like, does this feel like a song where vocals are going to add something that makes the song better? And if it did, then we would Matt and I would Matt would come up with some vocal lines, and I'd give him some lyric ideas, and we'd work together from there. And then for an overall concept of the album, that was more patched together later from what all those pieces we had.
Yeah, we started seeing things fitting together, and we're like, oh, maybe how can we fit these together in the way that these ones kind of like work as a structure.
I always find that part of the process being like weirdly fulfilling. It feels like it was like it's there the whole time. I just needed to make it a materialistic first.
Yeah, it was just like a couple extra practices and just a little bit more effort to be like, okay, this song, what if we do this drum, like a drum solo-y type thing, like, and then we'll come in on it because it's in a different key or something. There's like those couple extra practices to think of those like ideas on top of the songs to make it kind of a bigger thing, which was what I really appreciated, and I think it comes out in.
I was also wondering as well, like the lyrics on the album, they're quite abstract. I was just like wondering whether that was like an intentional thing, or whether that's just sort of how it came out.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I think it's very similar to what we were saying before, in that for us, like we were saying, the vocals are just another instrument, but the purpose of all instruments is to evoke a certain feeling.
Yeah.
And so we knew the feelings for each song we were going for. But then it varied from song to song versus how concrete of an idea was behind it. So I don't know, like in my mind, I know the different themes I was and me and Matt were going for with most songs, but I don't think at any point we was ever a goal for us to be create something that's straightforwardly about that. It's more that, do these words, when sung with the music, get you to that feeling that relates to the theme we're trying to go for here?
Definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've had the fortune of living through it in perspective, but to me, they're not abstract at all. I feel like I really understand.
I mean,
everything.
Well, yeah, and because like I suppose like,
you know what I mean?
Like when I say it's like abstract, like for example, so like the lyrics for "Okay, you can be tigers, but no crashing," like they're like you read them and you can kind of like like you were saying, Mark, like the words get you to the feeling that the song is intending, but there's also like a little bit of like ambiguity, and it's like some of the like we will come to pass and find ourselves, so farewell. Where we come from was where we go home. Like, it's the vibe is there and everything, but it's a little bit like the meaning is a little bit more ambiguous, I guess.
I always think back, Matt, you told me once about like the perfect pop songs are just these things that sound specific, but if you actually think about it, are just the most general statements possible. I forget what your example was. It was just something like, tonight's the night, and we're gonna be doing it right. Just like, I don't know. You had a better example than that? It was like where it sounds specific, but when you actually dig into it, can mean anything. And so that's what I totally agree with you when you're saying that, Matt, that to me, like I know like literally who and what those lyrics are about, But in writing them, I don't know, I think on some level I'm trying to keep it open, because if I make it too specific about the things in my life,
Oh, absolutely.
then
Yeah.
it doesn't let people bring their
Doesn't
own
resonate with the
perspective
listener.
into it.
Yeah.
So
I think that's absolutely, like, yeah, you're so right. Like, for example, like, I don't know, are you guys into Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds at all?
yeah, he's an amazing lyricist.
Yeah, so like his last album, Ghosteen, like, you know, that album is very specifically about his son's death, but the lyrics from that album can be extrapolated to any situation where you're dealing with loss or grief or anything like that.
Such a tight
And
rope to walk, because if you make it, you still want it to have meaning and impact. Because if you go too general and you become that pop song parody of not meaning anything at all. You're just saying words that sound cool. So it doesn't always work, and it's a hard thing to pull off. So that's why I like people like Nick Cave. I really respect when they're able to do that.
But yeah.
Easy.
But yeah, like I suppose like one of my favorite things about like your album is that the lyrics are like, you can read into them and you can find the meaning, but I feel like they're just like ambiguous enough that you can sort of have a few questions and like find your own meaning, like within the music.
I think a good analog or metaphor for it. So both Matts in the band went to art school. Yeah. The other Matt, who's not here, Matt Doherty, went for photography, and one of his main modes of photography he was especially into at that time, but still he still does it today with his photography. He'll take pictures that are quite blurry and blurred to the point where you can kind of make out the shape of what it is, but in losing the shape, it brings out a lot more of the emotions, and that's sort of exactly the same sort of thing we were going for the lyrics. Just like you get the shape of it and the feel enough that you can identify with it, but then you can also read into the ambiguity yourself.
Yeah, and that interpretiveness even extends to the song titles, which I think is very interesting. How there's like it's just like little statements being thrown out, and I want to know, like, is that because these, like, the separated songs through a connected statement, are they supposed to be one longer song, or what went into the titles? Because I really like them.
I don't know. I think it's a lot of it was the work of sort of after the fact trying to connect stuff. Sorry, I just saw that GIF in the chat. It was where I think comes back to that, like Matt was saying, a lot of the lyrics weren't written. It's all good. And so we had a bit more openness. Like, we'd have pet names for songs. Like the first song we always called Computers. Just because that was sort of a feel to some of the guitar parts. But then, I don't know, again, it comes back to those long bus rides where I would have that nugget, and I knew that song was going to connect to two other songs, and I liked the idea of all three songs becoming, if you put the titles together, they make a sentence. So then I wanted a sentence that started with Computers and went to somewhere else interesting, where each part could stand alone as a unique title, but all together would make a sentence like that. So that kind of became the goal with each of those groups of three. Can we take the pieces that we have and turn them into sentences of some kind?
No, I love that. I think it's a very, very unique concept. I don't know. I don't really see that much. If people want to do like a sentence in the title, they'll just throw a sentence in the title. I love how just, again, the concept of the interpretiveness is just on every level. I think it's really cool how thought out it was, whether or not it was before or after the fact you guys made.
And because I think it connects as well with the fact, like, I think often with the album, it's difficult to tell where one song finishes and one song sort of starts. And I think having the titles connect like that, like, sort of adds to that. So yeah. The title's definitely, I think, one of the most evocative parts of the album for me, for sure. And who did the album art?
That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you do it? What is it?
I mean, I came up with the idea through like images from encyclopedias and collaging and stuff like that, and kind of came up with the idea of the packaging. I got Doherty to do all the lettering, like the typography. I wasn't that good at screen printing at the time, so we got this guy to screen print it. But then once it came time to like actually put it all together, cut it out, we made stamps for it. I made two stamps. We also watercolored like the front and on the inside, and sewed it together. And then all the folding and stuff. We had like a bunch of sessions in my parents' basement, just putting together. But
yeah, nice. And another question that someone had. So yesterday I was talking with one of my friends about it, and they sort of noted. So I noticed, Mark, you said it's you and Matt mostly that do all the that do these kinds of things, and then I had a friend who I mentioned that to, and he was sort of, his question was like why that's the case.
I mean, I think speaking for myself, I mean, I think a lot of his personality. I'm a teacher. I like talking to groups of people. I'm probably the biggest cheerleader for the album and the band, so I love doing stuff like this to keep it going and that sort of thing. The other guys. Sorry?
I was just gonna say keep that interest newfound.
But yeah, and then I don't think the other guys like necessarily the interview anxiety that can come with it. I think I can't really speak for them. I know Matt, the other Matt Doherty was talking about. He just moved, so he was thinking that he might have done this one, but the move kind of took up too much of his energy.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah. I guess it's. Yeah, I don't know. Mark threw it in our WhatsApp group for anybody who was interested, but it's not that they're not interested. It's just maybe it's a little bit of shyness or just a little bit of like I don't know. I guess I would say that I'm pretty close up there as far as a champion of the record. It's it's something special that we're a part of, and I still super proud of it, and just so like overwhelmingly honored that people are listening to it and thinking about it in the ways that we built it, hoping that somebody would hoping that people would feel this way, ask these questions, and I would never get tired of talking about it. Even though I'm still making music now, man.
Oh, do any of your students know?
Okay.
Yeah, it's always a fun thing where, at least in the past couple of years, I don't bring it up, but then I also am the sort of teacher that can get sidetracked easily and distracted and pulled off in tangents. So occasionally, usually about once a semester it comes up, and the kids sort of roll their eyes now, but then one kid will look at the Spotify monthly listen, and then they'll go, "Whoa!" and everybody starts going crazy. So that's always a fun day. But then you'll get I had a couple, because I taught some grade 12s for the first time this year, and then there was one kid being like, "My friend in the States listens to you all the time." He just freaked out when I told him. So that was the first time something like that happened. and that was pretty cool because he was shook.
Hey Matt, also, did you want to drop the links to your active projects in the chat?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually playing bass in Gary from Newfound is a band right now.
Yeah, Mark mentioned that earlier.
Are you guys recording?
Yeah,
What were those studio pictures?
We have some recordings done.
Also, Mark, I've seen you're a bit of a knock-knock joke enthusiast.
Ah, that's a pull. Wow.
What are some of your favorite knock-knock jokes?
Woo. This is one that came out in a sleepover like last weekend. My son's friends pulled it. It was a great one. Knock
Yeah.
knock.
Who's there?
Who's there?
Europe.
Europe who?
Europe.
Oh,
What are you calling me?
Classic.
That's a good one.
That's a classic. I know that. Yeah.
I hadn't heard that one before.
That's a classic. Yeah. That's actually the joke I was gonna come into this this Discord this radio show with. That's my favorite. That's my personal favorite knock knock joke.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I don't know. That was a weird time where before I got full time into teaching, I did do a lot of writing. I did put out that one compilation of knock knock jokes, but that's I don't even know if I can remember any from that. It feels like another lifetime ago.
Yeah. And you're into ultimate frisbee as well.
Yeah. I coach at my school. So, but then now with the pandemic, so I used to play ultimate frisbee all the time. I played at U of T. I played a bit competitively, but then with the pandemic, that all sort of stopped. And so through the pandemic, I've gotten into disc golf now. Disc golf's my big thing because I can play it by myself, and though occasionally we'll play with Matt. We'll get together and we'll play some holes. It's happened a few times.
Awesome. Do either of you guys have like a Rate Your Music account or anything where you review music at all?
Review? No, I don't know. If I had time, I could. I do enjoy reviewing music.
No, a lot of. I know it's become like really popular. Rate Your Music has become like a really popular website. So you guys don't rate your music. Rate your music.
Rate your music. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's I think one of the main avenues when Newfound blew up was through Rate Your Music. Because that's where it's one of the top ranked emo albums. And that website, like there's some rappers called JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, and they actually released some merch that was a screenshot of their album's rating on Rate Your Music. Which was pretty funny, but yeah, if that's a really good website for you can just like rate music out of 5 and write reviews and stuff.
Yeah, we've read. I've read a bunch of our reviews of our album.
Yeah,
amazing.
That's
crazy.
It is interesting though, because I grew up like reading Pitchfork every day. Like this is from 2000 onwards, and I still will check it occasionally. But like, it's interesting to think some of the choices I was making on the album was with the thought of like, what can I do to get a higher potential Pitchfork score? Like that was in the back of my mind somewhere because I'd read so many reviews of Pitchfork growing up. Yeah. I knew the sorts of things that could play well. And we never did get a Pitchfork review, which still irks me. So like, this was it. I put it all together perfectly.
Maybe they'll one day do a classics week or something. Because I know like right now, like so your album, it's the 20th highest rated album of 2005. Which is kind of
What else
crazy.
came out in 2005, man?
It was 19.
So number one album that year was Illinois by Sufjan Stevens.
Okay, yeah, you can't.
Pretty good record right there. Yeah.
Late
It's
Registration by
alright, I
Kanye.
guess.
Yeah, Late Registration by Kanye West. Demon Days by Gorillaz.
I think we clear that.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
I would rate it higher than the Gorillas.
But yeah, like albums that you guys are above include Boards of Canada, Sigur Rós, Venetian Snares, System of a Down.
Oh, that's true. System of a Down. That's a W.
Yeah, there's some pretty notable albums there that you guys are rated higher than. Oh yeah, I love, like, I could literally lose hours scrolling through Rate Your Music. Honestly, it's kind of a problem. I just love, like, looking at, like, random years and just looking at, like, oh, what are the, like, highest rated albums that year? Whatever. But anyway,
Good way to.
I think that's pretty much. I think I've gone through all the questions, gone through all my questions. Rick, do you have anything else that you?
I mean, like, a lot of the questions I had and stuff were just whipping through the conversation. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do have another segment of our show that we have to get through. But thank you so much for coming on here and
No, it's an honor.
chatting with us. It's been awesome. I could honestly sit here for another 3 hours. But yeah, no, we really appreciate it.
Thank you
Matt,
guys
did
for
you
taking the time.
you should drop Moshe's solo link as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thanks, guys. No, this is a blast.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. Yeah, you guys being open to this. And actually, one last thing. Like, have you guys ever actually, because this, you know, this server is kind of very based around Connecticut because Don McLennan is from Connecticut. Have you guys ever been?
Yes.
I have not. Matt, have your tours ever taken you through?
Yeah, we played in I don't know, a town outside Hartford.
Yeah.
Driven through a lot, but I think we've only played one show in all the years.
Yeah, right. There you go. Interesting. Cool.
Gary never met his ICQ girlfriend.
Oh.
It never happened.
Yeah, she went to it. Did she go to another school?
She was in Connecticut and we were in Toronto.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. There you go.
The
Awesome.
online love.
Oh, I'm just pasting
Cool.
all these
Yeah,
links.
No,
My
yeah.
browser right now.
This was an awesome conversation. I love the insight, and I'm happy
Yeah,
to
one
see
of my-
you guys like still talking about the album many years
Yeah.
afterwards. That's got to be just
Especially,
such a good
you know,
feeling.
It's my personal pick for best emo album of all time. Like I like posted on my Instagram account a few months back, like recommending it to like all of my followers and everyone. But yeah. Anyway,
Well, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
yeah.
Well, sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, no,
No worries.
yeah. No. It was good just to get you on for that last part there. So
Well,
yeah. Thanks.
Well, you guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you for joining the Neighborhood Radio.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. See ya.
Take care.
You as well. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
That was Mark and Matt from Newfound Interest in Connecticut. That was amazing. That was the best thing of all time. I'm like
And I got
fangirling.
the recording worked. I watched Netflix, but it didn't block it this time, so I didn't disappoint you. You can.
Yeah.
This is recording.
Hell
Everyone
yeah.
will be able to listen to the
Yeah.
first part if you missed any of it. I'll try to get this out by the weekend.
Yeah. No, you're right, Wes. That is a moment of history. We got one of the most acclaimed emo bands of all time on the Neighborhood Radio. Like, what?
They were great too. What a
Yeah,
great
they were like, yeah, really easy to talk to, great insights in like, and